What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about NIO. I'm going to go over some of the current data points, break it down what's really moving it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So NIO is up 0.71%, 349 the low, 358 the high. Prior to this push higher, it was been kind of a relatively boring day and very quiet. So as far as the overall volume, 11.1 million shares being traded, 64.7 is the average. So relatively quiet stuff. What is really pushing it higher today is this right here. So Trump stating that they're going to make a good deal with China. And it's not just this, but there's a lot of other deals that's coming. So it looks as though the States and the EU have come to some agreement, same with Japan. And so when it comes down to the EU, this is where China could benefit, because the whole negotiations for EV tariffs between China and the EU were kind of put on pause until they came to an agreement with the States. So it's kind of more of a domino effect, but ultimately will really help China. But even aside from that, just between the States and China, if they come to some resolution, that should, in theory, really propel a lot of stocks higher. So let me know your viewpoint on that. The only other thing that has really come out that people should be somewhat aware of is this. So NIO Firefly's launch is going to be on April the 19th. So I think in general that should be good based on the price point and size. It could do very well in Europe, and even better if there is no tariffs. So again, negotiations are a very big deal for NIO. So let me know your viewpoint on that. Shorts are returning 1.73 million shares today. And so as I've mentioned, with the lower volume, they do make up a good chunk of the daily volume. So just kind of be aware of that. But 14.28% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 227.05 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost of our average 12.03. Utilization is 100%. Historically though, shorts do always return leading into a long weekend, because that way they don't get charged for unnecessary days, if that kind of makes sense. So I think this was somewhat anticipated, not just with NIO, but it's actually happening across the board. So yeah, today's a small short squeeze, if you want to kind of consider it that way, a little bit, but still, given the momentum, you don't see any transactions on the secondary market. Dark pool, you are seeing a couple, still relatively low though, but you do see over the last 20 minutes quite a lot, and that's just really pushing it higher because of this right here. So even though there's not really much clarity, so Trump doesn't actually state if there's been a conversation, he doesn't elaborate much based on this. It's just we have to wait and see. There is a chat, so Trump is speaking at, I believe, 1 p.m. today, so maybe it might be associated to China, because if there is some deal, again, the market will really move up higher because of that. Looking at the options, so you do see 334,000 in calls, 503,000 in puts. 62% of all the options being done today are bearish in nature, and most of it is actually coming from here. So between 11 and 11:05, as it kind of started to gain some momentum, you had a lot in premiums. And ultimately, if we kind of open this up and orient it based on premiums, it does show a lot of bearishness, and it looks as though a lot of puts, $3 puts, were purchased for the May 16th, 2025 expiry date, so 29 days out. So not necessarily the most optimistic, I guess, if that kind of makes sense. So let me know your viewpoint on that. Aside from that though, of the call options that are being purchased, you see a consensus for it to be above 350, and then the bears sub 350, possibly even sub 4 for the most part. So there's a little bit more upside. With today being Thursday, last trading day for this week, just take note of some of the open interest. So you have 10,000 at that 3, 25,000 at that 350, then 111,000 at that 4. So, and even extending it further, 101,000 at that 450. So definitely that could be the reason why shorts did increase and really manipulate NIO down, though, over the last 2 weeks. And that's just to really set the trajectory and to ensure that NIO had zero chance to get above that $4 mark. And even for today, I wouldn't be surprised if shorts somehow do wake up just enough to suppress NIO below that 350, just to close at 349, and then that would eliminate market makers and shorts to purchase 2.5 million shares, because that 25,000 in open interest would equate to that. That's not even factoring in that 10,000. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if NIO saw some manipulation near the end of the day, but with it at 353, which might already be happening, it is trading between this S1 and this S2, so $3.10 is going to be a strong support. 356, kind of flirting with that a little bit. That's going to be the next strong target / resistance. So just watch for it to close above that today, but like I said, you might see some manipulation just to bring it down below that 350 mark. So we'll wait and see how that all plays out. But on the actual chart itself, it is currently above or kind of flirting with that ALMA, so that is that 356. And then aside from that, you'd have a very wide gap. So just if there's that deal that does come between China and the States, then yes, in theory, you'll see NIO really move higher, but there needs to be some clarity on Trump, and as well, even just with the EU, because I think the Firefly, the big thing for that is going to be Europe. A lot of individuals, I don't know, is just, we need some clarity at the end of the day. Aside from that, no real new like analyst ratings, no articles, nothing along those lines. So last rating did come out, I believe it was 8 days ago, 350 price target, Mizuho, and I've already brought that up, but even going over a lot of the recent news, not really much talking about that. You see, I believe Goldman just came out stating that any ADRs might be in risk if, let's say, China and the States don't come to some resolution. You could see just US equities and hedge funds selling the ADRs. So again, that could really influence NIO's stock price if it does get to that. And Goldman did state as well about delisting or self-delisting from a lot of these companies. So it's just gray. We have to hope for a deal in order for NIO to really move higher. And yeah, generally it's a fun time to be a investor. So let me know your general thoughts on NIO. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? Do you think that this is a good catalyst for NIO, the Firefly, or do you think it's just poor timing? What's your kind of viewpoint on all of that? And do you think it's going to close above 350 given the circumstances? And unless you are watching this video after hours, then I guess you already know at that stage. But let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon and give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.